Hello and welcome to the Parent Piano Seminar. This is a 1 to 2 hour long crash course through 11 lessons of our introductory piano program for children, but adapted for parents. It is hosted by From Heart to Heart, which is a youth-run nonprofit that focuses on impacting and connecting the community through the arts and music. I'm Jerry. I've been a teacher for 3 years, and I'm currently working in my LRCM, which is essentially the equivalent of a master's in music. So what we'll be covering today includes things like notes, rhythms, how music is written, and practice tips will include stuff like mental resistance, how to overcome that, not playing the song like 10 times in a row, practice goals, things like that. We recommend that you take notes because it's going to be very fast. We're going to be cramming 3 to 4 months worth of material into 20 minutes. So highly recommend you take notes. So first of all, if you take out your fingers, we have to name all of these fingers. So hopefully all of you as adults know which one is your right hand and which one is your left hand. And so your thumbs are finger 1, and then index is 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so if I were referring to this finger, for example, I would say left hand, finger 4. And then take a look at the keyboard. So if you look at the piano, you'll notice that there's groups of 2 black keys and then groups of 3. 2, 3, 2, 3. And using this, we can really identify which white notes are which, because without these, all the white notes would just look the same. And so the white note that's directly to the left of the group of 2 black notes in the middle is called middle C. And this note is low C because it's also a white note to the left of the group of 2, but it's just lower than the middle. This would be high C, etc. And middle C is a super important note. It's for beginners, it's the note where we use as a reference to find all other notes. So really make sure that you're able to consistently, reliably, easily find this note middle C. So, like I said, it's super important. The first position we learn is middle C position. So this is placing both of our thumbs on C, and then the 2s on the next notes, the 3s on the next notes, the 4s on the next notes, etc. Okay? Using this position, we can play something called a spider exercise. So you play 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, both hands. So your 1s together, 2s together, 3s together, 4 together. And then you want to make sure that you aren't playing them and then not lifting them up. So you hold down the 1s even when you play the 2s. You want to lift up the 1s after you play the 2s. Next. So now we'll cover some posture. So you want to make sure that you're sitting the correct distance from the keyboard. You can't be too far or too close. As you can see in this little drawing, this kid has his fist clenched, and his fist is just barely touching that board of the piano. And so if your fist is kind of squeezing against it too hard, or you're going past the lid, you're sitting too close. If you're not even touching it, not even close to touching it, then you're sitting too far. Now height, this diagram isn't a great diagram because in reality it should be a little bigger than this arm should be slightly slanted downwards. Oh, I guess it's okay. So the idea is, if you look at this angle, it should have an L shape, and it should be slightly greater than 90 degrees. And then you want to make sure that you're sitting tall and your shoulders are relaxed, feet level to the ground. So once again, not too close, not too far. Correct height. Sitting tall, relaxed, feet to the ground. So using all this information, we can play a real song. So we have left hand and then we have right hand. So we can, again, we can reference a specific finger just by the hand and the finger number, and using that we can just play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's that simple. Alright, moving on to rhythm. So music has a beat just like our heartbeat. It can be fast or it can be slow, but it's always steady. So for example, sometimes you go for a run, your heartbeat picks up, but it's never erratic, like bum, ba-bum, bum, bum. Okay, and music is kind of the same thing. And what I mean by beat is beats are really just units for how long a note is. So for example, if I'm measuring how long something is, that's 1 centimeter. If I'm measuring how heavy something is, it's 1 gram. So how long a musical note is 1 beat. So a 1 beat note is a quarter note. A note that's half a beat long is an eighth note, 2 beats, half note, 4 beats, whole note. Okay, and you're probably wondering, where do these funny names come from? Why is it a quarter? This doesn't look particularly quartery to me. And the idea is usually think of it as a pizza. Okay, so imagine your pizza is your whole note, and usually notes are grouped into 4 quarter notes. 4 quarter notes equals a whole note. So if we take the pizza and we cut it into a half, then we get halves. If we cut it into quarters, it's quarters. Cut it into eighths, it's eighths. So really these names come from cutting a pizza. And then this is a metronome. This is a tool that's often used to count beats. So this machine just goes tick, 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 and it helps you keep time. So now we can kind of do the same thing we did in the first music score, except now we actually tell you how long each beat is, if you each note is. If you go back here and you look at Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, we didn't actually tell you how long to play this for. And this for, the length of that is actually different from this too, because Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, it's longer, right? But the reason kids play this naturally longer is because they know what Twinkle Twinkle Little Star sounds like, so they'll just do it naturally. But let's say you don't know that, you have to rely on rhythmic notation, and that tells you how long each beat is. And this funny symbol here is just a rest. So this is a quarter rest, and it just means don't play anything that beat. So this is a song, Hot Cross Buns. Hot cross buns rest, hot cross buns rest. Okay, moving on, lesson 5. So this is where we write music. This is called the grand staff. So I'm sure that if you've ever seen music before, music didn't look anything like this. It kind of looked like this, but it definitely didn't look anything like this. And the reason is we usually write music on this thing called a grand staff, which is just 5 lines and then 4 spaces. That's 1 staff. And then we have 2 staves and we connect them together using this curly brace. We call that a grand staff. And that's where we notate piano music on. The top staff is for the right hand, bottom staff is for the left hand, usually. And then treble, this is the treble clef, this little symbol here, and it really tells you that anything on this staff will be notes above middle C. And this is the bass clef. It means any notes written on this staff are going to be below middle C. So if you want to think of it in terms of a piano, below would be to the left of a note because the frequency gets lower, and then above would be to the right because as you go right, the frequencies get higher. So yeah, that's how we notate. We notate them on a specific line or a specific space. Middle C is the one exception. It's special. It's right in the middle. So we actually have a specific name for every single note on the piano. We don't just say that note and that note. We use the first 7 letters of the alphabet. So we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it's A again. You say, why 7? That seems like an arbitrary number. Well, actually, if you look at, I'll use a good example. If you look at this F, the next time this exact shape of note pops up is, voila, another F. That's one reason. Another reason is if you sing out this note, this one is da, and this one is da, da, da. They sound like the same note, but one's higher and one's lower, right? And same thing on a piano. So we just use the same letter to notate them. So this means that there are only 7 distinct white notes in music. And the black notes, you don't have to worry about them. You don't really have to worry about them now, but black notes, the names are just relative to the white notes next to them. So if it's to the right of a white note, then it's called a sharp. If it's to the left of a white note, it's called a flat. So this would be B flat and A sharp, 2 different names, okay, but the same note. Now, the reason we write these notes out on a grand staff as opposed to, I don't know, using middle C position all the time is because if you noticed the middle C position songs that you only ever kept your hand in the same place. You never actually moved it. And if you've ever watched YouTube videos of, I don't know, some famous pianist, Martha Argerich, playing a song, she never keeps her hands in the same place. And so how does she know where to move them? Well, we write it on the grand staff. And so when we're trying to figure out note names on the piano, we go from middle C. Remember how I said middle C is super important? In reference to middle C, based on middle C, we can say, okay, the note above C is D, the note above D is E, the note below C is B, the note below B is A, and we just keep doing that, and we get our entire alphabet. Similarly, we know that middle C is the special one with a short line, so then one note above is D, one note above is E, one note below is B, one note below is A. And this is super important to note that this note, the next one, the next note from a line note is a space note. The next note from a space note is a line note. Okay? It's not space note to a space note or line note to a line note. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but it's super inefficient to count everything from middle C. So for example, this note is an A, but if I were to give you that note and you counted from middle C, you would say, okay, well, I know this is middle C, and then D, E, F, G. Oh, it's A. And by the time you figured it out, that note is already long gone. So the way we combat this problem is by using reference notes. So the first reference notes you'll learn is, of course, you already know middle C, and then this is treble G. Treble G is 2 lines from middle C, okay? And then bass F is also, voila, 2 lines from middle C. And so using those notes, I can do something. So for example, I'm given this note. Instead of going C, B, A, G, I can just go F, G. Hopefully that makes sense. So these are the notes that you really have to remember, C, G, F. And using those, you can figure out pretty much any note relatively quickly for our purposes. Now, a handy trick to remember which clef is which is another name for the treble clef is G clef. And the reason is it kind of curls around the note G, treble G. And another name for the bass clef is the F clef. And those 2 dots are around bass F. So you can use the note to understand the clef. You can use the clef to understand the note. Either way, this is just a handy trick to memorize where those notes are placed. Okay, now just for pure organizational purposes, we like to organize our notes into beats. We don't like, if we go back, this is super messy because let's say a teacher was, she wanted to correct, let's say, this note, and this note is wrong. How would she say it? She would have to say the second line and then the 5th note. But what if, like, because some pages are different, like what if some editions of music are different. So what if someone else wrote hot cross buns and they just wrote all the notes in a line? So then you would have to say, okay, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th note. That would just be terribly inefficient. So what we do is we divide them into groups of beats, and usually, at least when you're first learning music, they'll be grouped into groups of 4 quarter notes. Each measure has 4 quarter notes. This is a measure, and then bar lines, this line separates the measures. When you have a double bar line, that means it's the end of the song. Sometimes we want to play loud and sometimes we want to play soft. So we use these symbols to tell us when to do that. So F stands for forte, loud. P stands for piano, soft. Mezzo piano is medium soft or moderately soft. Mezzo forte is moderately loud. So those are kind of the basic dynamics. All right, so that is pretty much all of the basics that you need to know for your children. Now we're going to go into some practice tips. So the first practice tip I'm going to talk about is mental resistance. So when I talk to kids who hate music, I'm sure a lot of kids are like, oh, I hate music. Music is so boring. And oftentimes parents are really put off by that. They're like, oh, my kid just doesn't like music. I guess I'll just not send them to music lessons. But I've actually never met a kid who actually hates music. And funnily enough, they love listening to music. And even when they grow up, they like learning the guitar by themselves. The reason is that they don't actually hate music itself or hate piano itself. They hate the boredom of practicing. And practicing shouldn't be boring, but it often is because kids practice the wrong way. And so, first of all, if your child has already developed a kind of thought that, oh, practice is boring, it's probably because parents are like, okay, you have to sit there for 30 minutes every single day, and then you just sit on a bench, and the reason you're sitting on that bench is because you're sitting on the bench. Sitting on the bench for the sake of sitting on the bench. And that's a terrible mindset to have, and it's not only a bad mindset, it's just super boring for the kid. Like if I told any adult to sit on a chair for 30 minutes doing nothing, that would probably be super boring. So it's not that they're a kid and they just don't understand. That's objectively boring. And how you fix that is you say, hey, why don't we just practice for 2 minutes today? And that's super easy, right? And the idea is you want to develop a habit of practicing 2 minutes every single day, as opposed to they're super excited one day, they practice for half an hour, and the next day they don't want to practice at all. And once they have overcome that mental resistance of sitting down on the bench, once you've told them it's only for 2 minutes, that's half the battle, okay? All right, so once you've overcome that mental resistance, now we're going to actually talk about how do you practice in a way that isn't boring. So when I was a kid, my parents would often say, oh, all you have to do is sit there and play this passage for like 10 times in a row, and I guarantee you by the end of the 10 times, you'll definitely be playing it better. And I absolutely hated that. It was so boring, and it is boring because you aren't playing it for a purpose. You're just playing it to play it. And that's a really bad way to practice. The correct way to practice is to look for your mistakes, and instead of starting at the beginning of the song, start right at like the beginning of that mistake. Okay? And really laser in on what's going wrong, not just mindlessly playing the song again and again and again and again. Really have an attitude of, this time I'm playing it this time. Why? I don't want to waste my time. Playing piano takes my time. Why am I spending my precious time to play this? Well, I probably want to improve something. And one strategy I like to use with my kids is I give them my little pen container and I say, okay, pick your 3 favorite pens. And they're like, are you out of your mind? And I'm like, no. They're like, pick your 3 favorite pens, and we're going to put them on the left of the piano. And then every time you play this hard section that we're working on correctly, perfectly, absolutely perfectly, no mistakes at all, we will move 1 pen from the left to the right of the piano. And the objective is to move all 3 pens to the right. But every time you mess up, play it even the tiniest bit imperfectly, all the pens must go back to the left. And this might seem really frustrating and really nitpicky at first, but it is really based on a universal idea among teachers. Like, if you play something correct once, that's pretty easy. You can probably do that without much practice. But it's really quite difficult if you don't really get it to play it 3 times in a row perfectly. And if you are able to do that, that probably means that you've got it pretty solidly. And oftentimes this also causes kids to realize something else. It's that you have to practice slowly. I don't know how many times I've said that to kids. You really, 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 really have to slow down, because it's not about playing fast. Nobody's impressed by you playing fast. If you play fast and incorrectly, that's 1,000 times worse than playing slow and perfectly. And so doing this 3 times in a row thing oftentimes make kids realize that. And so they'll slow down, and then slowly, once you've got it perfectly, then you'll be amazed at how easy it is to take something and slowly speed it up until you're playing it ridiculously fast. But if you try to go the other way around, it just doesn't work. Any other notes? Right, so yeah, really just make sure that you're lasering in on those mistakes and using the correct method to solve them. And then the last idea is kind of 3 stages of learning a song. The first stage is notes and rhythms. The second stage is dynamics and articulations. And the third stage is interpretation. So oftentimes a lot of kids will just get stuck on notes and rhythms, but that's really only just the first part. Notes and rhythms are actually, if you use those tips I mentioned earlier, like lasering in on your mistakes, you should be able to get them fairly soon. But if you only play notes and rhythms, it doesn't sound like the song at all. Like if you go listen to, I don't know, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, if you just play that without any dynamics, there's none of the excitement. There's none of the wild da 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 that makes you want to jump out of your skin. The dynamics are really an integral part of the music itself. Same thing with articulations. Articulations is just a fancy word for how you play each note. So for example, I might want to play it smoothly, or play each note staccato. So staccato just means each note is short and sharp. Da, 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 da. That's staccato. So those 2 things are really quite integral to the music, and they're often written directly on the music score. And many times parents and kids and teachers will waste so much time going to lessons, and then the teacher will just point out, hey, you're not doing the notes right. Hey, you're not doing the dynamics right. When those things you could totally do by yourself. It definitely takes a lot of mental energy to find those things, but it's definitely worth it. And you definitely don't need a teacher for that. You just need a teacher to kind of catch the things that you've missed. So now the last stage is interpretation. So interpretation is really what sets apart one person's playing of a piece from another person's playing of a piece. So for example, if I play Für Elise by Beethoven, it'll probably be different from I don't know what Lang Lang plays. And the reason I can probably play the notes and the rhythms and the articulations and even the dynamics perfectly, because those things are all objective. The interpretation is the subjectivity of it. It's when you might play it a little slower than someone else, and that affects the feeling. You might slow down on this particular part, or you might play with a certain feeling. Sometimes I'll tell kids, hey, just play this like your dog just died, or you just got into a massive argument with your parents about watching TV. Those evoke real emotions in us, and kids will just automatically start playing better because music really is just the audio version of emotion. Um, and so it's really important not to lose sight of the fact that music is really just emotion, and just play these notes and these rhythms like robots. Because really, if you go to competitions, judges will expect you to be perfect in your notes and your rhythms and your dynamics and your articulations. They are looking for your art interpretation. How are you playing this differently from someone else? Are you feeling it differently? Are you just masterfully doing some technical thing that is so different from someone else that you created? It's really about innovation and interpretation. That's what sets you apart. But yeah, those are all the practice tips we have. So laser in on your mistakes, play slowly, make sure you have stages, and I'm missing something else, but that's okay. You can probably go back in the recording and find that. So thank you for coming. Just FYI, From Heart to Heart does offer lessons that cost $0 to $10. And the idea is, if you're looking for a low cost, low commitment way to help introduce your child to piano, this is a great way to do that. You can go to our website and just click on private lessons and register there. This is our email. You can shoot us an email if you have any questions at all about anything. And this is the link to our parent package. It's basically a package that includes all of all of the links to our video lessons and homework sheets and music sheets for kids, and you can use that to review or go more in depth with a concept that you might have struggled with, or let something sink in a little more by playing a song that is specifically geared toward that music. All of our resources are created by us, and so they're all completely free. Feel free to print them, distribute them, whatever you want to do. But yeah, that is the seminar. Thank you all for coming, and have a great day.